Thank you for being here. I'm going to share with you some working smart techniques for isometric design. So the objective is to create objects that look like this. But if you follow my thinking process and you start thinking the way Illustrator thinks, you'll be able to solve any isometric design issue and problem. Now, for those of you that are new to this idea, isometric design is the illusion of creating 3D objects on a 2D plane. So it helps to have a grid. I'll share with you how to create a grid in a second. But before I do that, I just want to create a simple rectangle. To share with you some basic techniques, I'm going to hit the M for rectangle tool and hold down the shift key and create a perfect rectangle, which of course is a square. Now, if you get intimidated by math, there is a little bit of math involved, but it's straightforward. I'll take it one step at a time. So the first you want to do is scale the object to a geometric shape, or an isometric shape, I should say. Turn the S for scale tool, and we're going to scale this horizontally. We're not going to scale it, so it's going to be 100%. Vertically, we're going to scale this 86, if you want to write this down, 86.604%. That's a mathematical equation for working with isometric shapes. So the first thing you want to do is scale the object. Okay. The second thing we'll do is go to the shear tool. Now, if the shear tool is not out, I highly suggest delodging it because there's not a shortcut, although you can set up a shortcut for the shear tool. So I'm going to double click the shear tool, and we're going to shear this at 30% positive, or just 30%, and hit the return key. Okay, so undo. So basically it took the shape and it did this, it sheared it. The next thing we need to do is go to the rotation tool. The object is selected, and hit the return key, and we're going to rotate this. R for rotation, hit the return key, and we're going to rotate this at negative 30%. So let's stop for a second. So the shear was positive 30%. The rotation is negative 30%, and that's after you scaled it at 86.604, vertically, 100%, horizontally. The return key. So you'll see that that could be the floor of an isometric shape. Okay, so it fits any place on the grid. Now, I'll explain my technique for creating a grid in just a second. Okay, now, what I've done here to make things super easy is I've created under the Window Actions palette, Window Actions, I created a series of actions. Now, I'm not going to go through great detail on how I created these action palette, but I just want to share with you a concept. I'll do this in a subsequent video. I just want to make this video short and sweet to the point. So what I want to do here is I want to have 3 separate objects. I'm going to have an object here. I'm just going to scale this down. In fact, let's just create it smaller. Okay. Then I'm going to just clone copy to the right. And we'll fill this with a different color. Eyedropper. Duplicate that, Command D, and different color. For those of you that are new to Illustrator, you'll see me working smart every step of the way. The first thing I do, and if you've seen my previous videos, is I always hit the A key. The A will give me the direct selection tool. From that point on, you'll never see me select that tool again because I can simply hold down the Command key. So if I'm in the rotation tool, or the scale tool, or the rectangle tool, I can select something by holding down the Command key. Command click, Macintosh, Control click for Windows. Okay. So what I've done here is I set up a series of actions, and again, I'll talk about actions in another video. So we're going to start from the right. So right, I can go right here and click, and that becomes a right side of my isometric shape. This is going to be the floor. So I come up the floor and I click, boom, it makes that isometric shape. I come over here, I'm going to click the left, and that creates my left isometric shape. Okay, now, here's a better way to think about that. Now, with these isometric shapes created, then you would have to basically just put them in place. I drag them into place. Now, sometimes it gets a little difficult. I'm just going to zoom in here for a second. Spacebar, grab the page, move the page. So sometimes it gets a little difficult to line them exactly the way you want to. So here's a better technique. So I'm just going to start with the left side. So what I would suggest you do is select the left side. I'm just going to change the color of this to maybe yellow. So you can see the anchor points. Let's make this yellow. Okay. So what I have going on here is a simpler way to do this is this. This is how I would do it if I didn't have the actions palette in place. Okay. So you could actually create this shape from scratch by simply creating a rectangle, scaling the rectangle based on the properties that I shared with you, scale, and then directly selecting these two anchor points and moving them up with your arrow keys. So it fits the grid. So it basically fits the perspective of the grid. That's one way of doing it too. So if you don't want to go through the mathematical process, this is a great way to do it too with the grid. Again, I will share with you how I make the grid later on. So then I would go to my reflection tool, which is letter 0, and I pick a point to reflect from holding down the Option key. So again, 0 selects the reflection tool. I hold down the Option key and I click right there on the edge. And I'm going to reflect this 90 degrees and make a copy. Let's just change the color so it's visually different. Now this next part is pretty simple. I simply select the object, grab the object, move the object up. I'm just going to put this out of the way from those buildings. Then I can just take this object, select it with my direct selection tool. I'm simply holding down the Command key and put that right in place. So to me, that's a more simplistic way to get it exactly where you need to get it. And I'm just going to hold down the, go to the eyedropper tool and just make it a different color. So there is your bread and butter symmetrical shape. Okay, so let's move forward. Now what I suggest you do is I'm going to select these objects by holding down the Command key plus the plus key. So I get all the objects, even though I'm in my direct selection tool, I can group this. Anything about the object is under the object menu, object group, Command G. Make a change. Save a change. Okay, so let's fit in window Command 0. So now I'm going to hide everything. So I'm going to hide everything except this. So I'm going to lock this into place. Command 2, anything about the object is under the object menu, object lock, Command 2. Then I'm going to select all because everything else is in a separate layer, and I'm going to hide this, Command 3. Make a change, save a change. Okay. So how I got the grid is very simple. I'm going to make myself a brand new document. I'm not going to save the document. I'm just going to share with you how I created the grid. If you hit Shift-Tab, that's going to hide these secondary palettes. Shift-Tab gets them out of the way. Shift-Tab brings them back. Of course, if you want to hide all your palettes, it's the Tab key. The Tab key hides all your palettes. The Tab key brings it back. So Shift-Tab would hide the secondary palette. So what I want to do is under the line tool is the grid, rectangle grid tool. And I'm going to hit the return key. And I'm going to make a grid that is 100 by 100. Okay, nothing else matters at this point. Just make a grid 100 by 100. Then I'm just going to back out here, Command minus. And I'm going to create a grid, holding down the Shift key to create a proportional grid. Okay, so step 1, similar to what we did before, we're going to hit the scale tool. We're going to scale this down at 86.062. My mistake, got ahead of myself. I meant to say 86.602. So that's going to be the scale ratio. Okay, then we're going to go to the shear tool and do the same thing we did before. So double click on the shear tool. In this particular case, we're going to go 30 degrees positive. Then we're going to go to the rotation tool and rotate this negative 30 degrees. Okay, so I have something like this. So from this point, I'm going to go to the scale tool and just scale this whole thing up. If I Shift-Tab backwards, that'll go up or down. So I'm going to go, let's make this 120%. And if that's not big enough, I'm just going to keep it in Command D until it fills the space. Now, if you want to mask this, this is totally up to you, but we don't have to do that. The next thing I would do is if you want to have your vertical lines as well, I would probably lock this into place, Command 2, zoom in here for a second, go to your line tool, Basically create a line in the center, right in the center of that diamond, and then just clone copy those across. So that's basically saying if you do want to have Command D, if you do want to have those horizontal lines, that's how you do it. Now, what I suggest you do with this is put this in a separate layer. I would put this in a separate layer and call it grid. I also suggest, I'm going to unlock, excuse me. I also suggest you change the point size to maybe 0.25 points, and also maybe change the opacity down to about 35–40%. So that's my technique for creating the grid. Okay, now again, you can zoom, you can basically scale and make this grid any size you wish. But those are the proportions, and that's how you basically make an isometric grid to draw upon. So what I can now do, I'm going to grab the page, move the page, and we can work with these colors. I know these colors mean nothing, so I can select all, and I'm just going to put this over here to the, I'm going to unlock Command Option 2 and drag this over to the left. Now again, if you want to have a custom color palette, that's not the objective here. The objective is how we build this the right way, the smart way. Now keep in mind, even though this is grouped, Command G, I could still directly select this and pull it apart without ungrouping. That's a very powerful technique that people forget about. If you want to select the entire group, you don't have to drag a marquee around it. You simply hold down the Command key Macintosh, Control key for Windows, plus the Alt or Option key, Option Macintosh Alt, and click once, click twice, and that selects the whole entire group. Okay, so if I had something like this happening, I can click once, hold down the Command key twice, and 3 times, and if these are grouped together, so say I selected these and group those, so that's a group inside of a group. So I can click once, hold down the Command or Option key, click again, and that's going to get the entire group. So it's just a working smart technique that I don't have to run up here to my Move tool every 10 seconds. Okay, so from here I can just select all, Command A, select all, and I'm going to drag this up to right about there. Now, it's going to be easier to select this in order to make this shorter if, in fact, I lock this one in place. So I'm going to hold down the Command key and the Option key and click, and Command 2, lock. So therefore, I can just directly select these top anchor points and do my arrow key down. And if you don't want to see the points, the anchor points, Command H hides, Command H shows, and hit the down arrow key. Now what I've done is I set up a short key under my edit menu for keyboard shortcuts for inverse. So I use this a lot when I'm looking for color ideas. So under the edit menu, edit colors, invert colors. So I made mine Command Shift Option 8. So that's going to invert the colors. Now from here, what I can do is go to the scale tool, hit the return key, and we want to do a proportional scale at, say, 120%, and return. Okay, just make sure the whole thing's selected. My mistake, I didn't select the whole thing. So as for scale, and let's scale this at 120%. So now I could take unlock Command Option 2, anything about the object is under the object menu, unlock all. Now keep in mind you can selectively lock, but you can't selectively unlock. That's why you may choose to put things in layers. So as an example, this grid is in a layer, and my little Think Illustrator is in a separate layer. So now I can take this information and move it up. So I'm going to hold down the Command key and drag this to the top and move it to the front. So right now it's in the back. Anything about the objects under the object menu, object transform, object arrange, and bring to front. Command Shift right bracket. Now from here you can change the color. So I can go to my color artwork icon. I have a shortcut for that, Command Option C. I can hit the edit, make sure you lock the colors into place, and simply shift the colors around and hit OK. All right, now let's take this object again. It's going to be simpler to select it if you lock the bottom object in place. So I'm going to select this bottom object, holding down the Command key plus the Alt key to select the entire group, and Command 2 lock. So therefore I can just directly select these top objects and move it up a little bit. Okay, pretty cool stuff. Make a change, save a change. Now, let's say that you want to put a window on here. So I can go to my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to create a window shape. Now, if I'm in my direct selection tool, what I can do is hold the top left dot, hold down the shift key, the right upper dot, and then just drag this and make this a rounded window. Now, if you want to create some depth to this, meaning that I want to have some kind of shadow, what I might suggest doing is clone copying this off to the left a little bit to offset it, or to the right, depending on where your sun's coming from. So I'm going to offset this to the left, to the right. So now what I can do is bring up Pathfinder and divide and delete. So with Pathfinder up, I'm going to click divide. I'm going to select here. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to select this part, and let's just give this a darker color. So I'm going to double click here. Let's just drag this color down. Again, it depends on where your sun's coming from. Okay, so now I can select this and group this, Command G. Accidentally Command D by mistake. Command G. Now keep in mind, because it's grouped, you could still select the object separately with the direct selection tool. That's why I always work in that tool. It's a great, great technique. Okay, so now that I want to make this the same shape, I can make sure I bring my window actions palette back. And with the actions palette back, I'm just going to drag this out for a second. So now I want to make this my right side. So right side click, and it's the same technique that we used before. It's the rotating. I will do a separate video to share with you how I created these actions. So if I click right here and hit the play button, there you go. From here I'm going to scale. S for scale, hit the return key, shift tab backwards, which is easier than tabbing forward, shift tab backwards, and let's scale this starting at about 60%. Okay, so I can take this and I can put this right here. That'll be my window. Now, if you want to do a window on the other side, it couldn't be easier. So I can go to my reflect tool, pick a point to reflect from, which is the O key, and reflect over. Now, a couple things here. Obviously, you want to affect where your light's coming from. So that's a whole other subject, but it's the basic idea. You want to reflect where your sun's coming from. Now, if you want to put a steeple on this is pretty simple. You can just go to your pen tool. There's a couple ways to do this. This is one way of doing it. If I hit Command Y, I can actually see my grid. And I'm going to zoom in here for a second. So I'm going to grab the page, move the page. And you can see this is the top section up here. So I can create a section right here. That's the middle line there. I can go up here to the top, and I create a bottom. Now, of course, if you want to simply make a rectangle or a triangle, you can do that as well. Actually, I screwed that up. I didn't mean to go down that far. I meant to go right to there. So the rest is quite simple. I could just go to my reflection tool, pick a point to reflect from, and reflect over. Holding down the Option key to make a clone copy and the Shift key to constrain it, and we'll just give this a different color, maybe this purple color. Now, what's really cool about this, I'm going to hit Shift Tab to hide the palettes. Shift Tab will hide the palettes, and I'm just going to zoom out, Command minus. So with my direct selection tool selected, I could basically go up, go down, and you just go up, down with this with my arrow keys. Okay, so it's now if it's not exact, I can do this exact. So just you get the issue here. Now the other thing you could have done too, Plan B, is I could have created a rectangle, rotated the rectangle, and just delete it to make a triangle. Of course, I could have used my tool over here as well. Now, another, oh, sorry about that. I thought I paused. Another one of my favorite things to do too, I'm just going to scale up for a second. I got distracted. My Apple Watch was going off, so apologize about that. So I'm going to scale this up to about 120%. Okay, now let's do that again, 120%. And I'm just going to put that right about here in the center. Now, another thing I like to do with my objects as far as getting different looks, different feels, I'm going to select this and add more anchor points. In a previous video, I did that by setting up anchor points under the keyboard anchor point and a keyboard shortcut presets. So object, path, add anchor points, which I made Command-Shift Option A. Now the advantage of doing this is if you have more anchor points, you have more places to pull from. So as an example, I'm going to Command Y. I'm going to zoom in here for a second. So if I was directly select, so this is selected, so I can select the anchor points here, and so there's an anchor point here, and an anchor point here. So I'm in the direct selection tool. So I can select this anchor point and that anchor point. So therefore, when I go to the scale tool and hit the return key, I'm going to scale this not proportionally. I'm going to scale this horizontally 110%, vertically 100%. I do this quite a bit because I am looking for an idea or a concept. So now I can do something like this, Command D, I can just go scale, return, and then Command D, Command D, Command D. Now if you want to go the other way, obviously, if you want to have more of a caving in on itself, then horizontally, let's go 90%, and vertically, I don't want to move it, so I can do something like this. Actually, I meant to get that anchor point. Select this anchor point, hold down the Shift key, select that anchor point, go to the Scale tool, hit the Return key, and let's scale this in at 90%. Command D, Command D, Command D. So it looks more like a pedestal. Now, if you keep doing something like that, it'll definitely look like a pedestal. So it depends on where you put those anchor points, but the advantage of having more anchor points is that I have more flexibility over my design. So that is the basis of working with isometric shapes. I will do more in-depth study on doing more sophisticated things with isometric design. So my name is Robert Farrell. I've been doing Adobe Illustrator since 1987. I'm always constantly challenging myself with better techniques. It's not about the software. You have to understand how the software thinks, but you want to come up with time-saving techniques. I actually saw a person on YouTube yesterday that, to his credit, has, this one video had almost 1 million views to it, but it was a lot of wasted steps. I mean, he did this thing with the golden ratio, and he did something that took literally 15 minutes that I did to get the same end results in literally 42 seconds. So you got to learn how to work smart with your tools. You got to have a complete understanding of your tools and know the best approach, the best way, because bottom line is this, guys and girls, boys and girls, is time is money. So you could start charging $100. I mean, for my design work, sometimes I'll charge upwards of $250 an hour. And somebody said, well, that's outrageous. Why would I pay that much? Well, because I'm getting things done in 6-7 hours, and somebody that charges $40 an hour, they're camped out all week. Now, when I do my After Effects work, I used to charge per finished second. Per finished second of After Effects, I charge anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500 per finished second. Now, for those of you that don't understand what that means, I'm not charging $2,500 per second. I'm charging $2,500 per finished rendered second. So if you have a 30-second commercial, we'll do the math. It's that type of thinking. So I want to share with you that you can basically make a lot of money if you know what you're doing by working smart. And that's why my battle cry is Think Illustrator. #Think Illustrator. Thanks again for being here. My name's Robert Farrell.